The calm before the storm. The HMS Valiant hummed with activity as Captain Eleanor Voss strode onto the bridge, her gaze sweeping over the bustling crew. Lieutenant Marcus Kane was already at his station, his fingers flying across the control panel. "Status report, Lieutenant," Captain Voss commanded, her voice cutting through the hum of the ship. Kane glanced up, his brow furrowing slightly. "All systems operational, Captain. No sign of Zeltari activity in the sector." Captain Voss nodded, a sense of anticipation prickling at the back of her mind. The calm before the storm. "Keep an eye on long-range sensors," she ordered. "I want to know the moment anything changes." "Aye, Captain," Kane replied, returning his focus to his console. As the crew carried out their duties with precision and efficiency, Captain Voss found herself pacing the bridge, her mind racing with thoughts of the impending conflict. The Zeltari were a formidable enemy, their motives inscrutable and their technology unmatched. Suddenly, the ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Sophia Ramirez, called out from her station. "Captain, incoming transmission from Fleet Command." "On screen," Captain Voss said, striding over to the main view screen. The image of Admiral Montgomery materialized before them, his expression grave. "Captain Voss, Lieutenant Kane, I trust you're both prepared for what's to come." "We're ready, sir," Captain Voss replied, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Admiral Montgomery nodded, his gaze lingering on the captain. "You've proven yourself time and time again, Eleanor. I have every confidence in your abilities." "Thank you, sir," Captain Voss said, a flicker of gratitude crossing her features. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence once more. Captain Voss turned to Lieutenant Kane, her expression determined. "We may be facing our greatest challenge yet, Marcus," she said, "but I know we can overcome it." Kane met her gaze, a fire burning in his eyes. "We won't let humanity down, Captain. Not now, not ever." The crew worked tirelessly throughout the day, their focus unwavering as they prepared for the inevitable clash with the Zeltari. As night fell and the stars twinkled in the vast expanse of space, Captain Voss found herself alone on the bridge, lost in thought. "Captain, you should get some rest," Lieutenant Kane's voice broke through her reverie. Captain Voss turned to him, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'll rest when the job's done, Marcus. Until then, I'll be right here, ready for whatever comes our way." Lieutenant Kane nodded, a look of admiration in his eyes. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Captain." With that, the two officers returned to their duties, their resolve unyielding in the face of the impending storm. Chapter 2. The Disaster Strikes. The HMS Valiant cruised through the void of space, its sleek hull slicing through the darkness. On the bridge, Captain Eleanor Voss monitored the ship's systems with a watchful eye, her fingers tapping impatiently on the armrest of her command chair. Lieutenant Marcus Kane stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the view screen. "Captain, we're approaching New Terra Prime," he reported. Captain Voss nodded, her jaw set in determination. "Prepare to drop out of warp," she ordered. As the HMS Valiant slowed to sublight speed, the image of New Terra Prime loomed large on the view screen. Smoke billowed from the planet's surface, a stark contrast to the tranquil beauty it once held. "My God!" Lieutenant Kane breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Voss clenched her fists, her heart heavy with sorrow. "Begin scanning for survivors," she commanded. "We'll do everything we can to help." Lieutenant Kane nodded, his fingers flying across the control panel. "Scanning now, Captain," he said, his voice tense with anticipation. As the minutes ticked by, the tension on the bridge mounted with each passing moment. Then a faint blip appeared on the sensor readouts, followed by another and another. "We've got survivors, Captain," Lieutenant Kane announced, relief flooding his voice. Captain Voss allowed herself a small smile, a glimmer of hope amidst the devastation. "Prepare to initiate emergency protocols," she ordered. "We're going in." With practiced precision, the crew of the HMS Valiant sprang into action, coordinating the rescue efforts with military efficiency. Shuttlecraft were launched, medical teams assembled, and supplies loaded onto transport vessels. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call from one of the colony's outlying settlements," Lieutenant Sophia Ramirez reported from her station. "On screen," Captain Voss commanded. The image of a frantic colonist filled the view screen, their voice trembling with fear. "Please, you have to help us," they pleaded. "The ground is shaking and the sky is falling. We need to evacuate immediately." Captain Voss's heart sank as she listened to the desperate pleas for help. "Lieutenant Kane, plot a course for the settlement," she ordered. "We'll prioritize their evacuation." "Aye, Captain," Lieutenant Kane replied, his hands flying over the navigation controls. As the HMS Valiant raced towards the beleaguered settlement, Captain Voss couldn't shake the feeling of dread gnawing at her gut. The disaster on New Terra Prime was far from over, and the lives of millions hung in the balance. Race against time. On the bridge of the HMS Valiant, Captain Elena Voss monitored the ship's progress towards the stricken settlement on New Terra Prime. The urgency in the air was palpable as the crew worked tirelessly to coordinate the rescue efforts. "Lieutenant Kane, how are the repairs to the colony's infrastructure coming along?" Captain Voss asked, her voice tight with concern. Lieutenant Marcus Kane glanced up from his console, a bead of sweat trickling down his brow. "We're making progress, Captain," he replied, "but it's slow going. The damage is extensive." Captain Voss nodded, her jaw clenched in determination. "Keep at it, Marcus. Every second counts." As the HMS Valiant drew closer to the settlement, the full extent of the devastation came into view. Buildings lay in ruins, and fires raged unchecked in the streets. The ground trembled beneath them, a constant reminder of the planet's precarious state. "We're approaching the settlement, Captain," Lieutenant Sophia Ramirez reported from her station. "Prepare to initiate evacuation procedures," Captain Voss ordered. "We need to move fast." With practiced efficiency, the crew sprang into action, coordinating the evacuation efforts with military precision. Shuttlecraft descended to the planet's surface, their cargo bays filled with supplies and medical personnel. "Captain, we're receiving reports of aftershocks throughout the region," Lieutenant Ramirez warned. Captain Voss's grip tightened on the armrest of her command chair. "We'll have to work quickly," she said, her voice tense with urgency. As the evacuation continued, Lieutenant Kane's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we've stabilized the colony's power grid," he reported, "but we're still struggling to restore communications." Captain Voss nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "Keep at it, Marcus. We need to maintain contact with the surface." Hours passed in a blur of activity as the crew of the HMS Valiant worked tirelessly to evacuate the beleaguered settlement. Despite the mounting challenges, their resolve remained unwavering. "Captain, we're nearing the completion of the evacuation," Lieutenant Ramirez announced. Captain Voss allowed herself a small sigh of relief. "Well done, everyone," she said, her voice tinged with pride. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We need to remain vigilant." As the last shuttle lifted off from the surface, carrying the final evacuees to safety, Captain Voss felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her, but she knew that their work was far from over. The disaster on New Terra Prime was just the beginning of a long and arduous journey. Evacuation efforts. On the surface of New Terra Prime, chaos reigned as Dr. Mei Ling and Chief Petty Officer Raul Martinez worked tirelessly to organize the evacuation efforts. Buildings lay in ruins, and panicked civilians filled the streets, desperate to escape the impending catastrophe. "We need to get these people to safety, Chief," Dr. Ling shouted over the din, her voice barely audible above the cacophony of screams and alarms. Chief Martinez nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of danger. "I'm on it, Doc," he replied, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. With practiced efficiency, the two of them sprang into action, directing civilians towards the waiting transport vessels with firm but gentle hands. Despite the danger lurking around every corner, they refused to let fear dictate their actions. As they worked, Chief Martinez's colorful personality and unconventional methods brought a moment of levity to the dire situation. With a twinkle in his eye and a quick wit, he managed to elicit smiles from even the most frightened of evacuees. "Come on, folks, don't be shy now," he called out, his voice booming above the noise. "Plenty of room on these ships for everyone, but we've got a schedule to keep." Dr. Ling couldn't help but chuckle at his antics, grateful for the brief respite from the tension that hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Together, they pushed through the chaos, their determination unwavering in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, on the HMS Valiant, Commander Jackson Hayes coordinated with nearby human outposts for additional support. With a steady hand and a cool head, he relayed vital information to the fleet, ensuring that reinforcements arrived swiftly to aid in the evacuation efforts. "Commander Hayes, we've got incoming hostiles from the northwest," Lieutenant Sophia Ramirez reported from her station on the bridge. Commander Hayes's brow furrowed in concern, his mind already racing ahead to formulate a plan of action. "Deploy the perimeter defenses," he ordered. "We can't afford to let anything slip through the cracks." As the battle raged on, Commander Hayes remained a steady presence on the HMS Valiant, his leadership inspiring confidence in the crew and the evacuees alike. Despite the overwhelming odds, he refused to back down, determined to see every last person safely evacuated from the planet's surface. Together, Dr. Ling, Chief Martinez, and Commander Hayes worked tirelessly to coordinate the evacuation efforts, their unwavering resolve a beacon of hope in the darkness that threatened to consume them. And though the road ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, they knew that as long as they stood united, they could overcome any obstacle in their path. Enemy interference. The ground trembled beneath their feet as another aftershock rippled through New Terra Prime. Dr. Mei Ling steadied herself against a crumbling wall, her eyes scanning the chaos around her. Civilians rushed towards the waiting transport shuttles, their faces etched with fear and desperation. "Stay calm, everyone," Dr. Ling shouted, her voice rising above the clamor. "We'll get you to safety." Chief Petty Officer Raul Martinez, always the larger-than-life figure, stood amidst the throng, directing the flow of evacuees with his usual blend of authority and humor. "Come on, folks! No time to dawdle," Martinez bellowed, waving his arms like an enthusiastic conductor. "Remember, it's not a line for free food, it's a line for survival, and don't worry, we'll get you there faster than a drunk pilot on leave." Despite the dire situation, a few of the evacuees managed weak smiles at his antics. Dr. Ling couldn't help but appreciate his ability to lighten the mood, even in the face of such peril. "Martinez, any word from the HMS Valiant?" Dr. Ling asked as she checked over a young girl with a scraped knee. Martinez tapped his earpiece. "Commander Hayes is coordinating with nearby outposts. Reinforcements are on the way, but we've got to hold the line until they arrive." Dr. Ling nodded, her mind racing with the enormity of their task. "We need to keep these people moving," she said. "The aftershocks are getting worse." As if on cue, another tremor shook the ground, sending debris cascading from the damaged buildings. Dr. Ling and Martinez exchanged a grim look before diving back into the fray. Up on the HMS Valiant, Commander Jackson Hayes was a picture of calm amidst the storm. His fingers flew over the controls as he relayed instructions to the fleet. "Lieutenant Ramirez, what's our status on reinforcements?" Hayes asked, his voice steady. "Reinforcements are en route, Commander," Ramirez replied. "ETA is 15 minutes. Hayes nodded. "We'll need to hold until then. Keep our perimeter defenses at maximum and prepare for enemy interference." As if summoned by his words, an alarm blared across the bridge. "Commander, we've got Zeltari fighters inbound," Ramirez shouted. "Deploy defensive maneuvers," Hayes ordered. "All hands, prepare for battle." Back on the ground, the first explosions lit up the sky as Zeltari fighters swooped in, their weapons blazing. Dr. Ling and Martinez ducked for cover as debris rained down around them. "Just what we needed," Martinez muttered, his usual humor strained under the weight of the attack. "Aliens with bad timing." Dr. Ling's eyes narrowed as she scanned the sky. "We need to keep moving. Martinez, can you get those anti-aircraft guns online?" Martinez grinned, a spark of his usual bravado returning. "Doc, I thought you'd never ask." He sprinted towards a nearby building, barking orders to a group of soldiers who scrambled to follow his lead. As the anti-aircraft guns roared to life, the Zeltari fighters found themselves under a sudden and unexpected barrage. The sky lit up with tracer fire, and a few of the enemy ships were quickly reduced to flaming wreckage. Dr. Ling continued to shepherd the evacuees towards the shuttles, her heart pounding with each explosion. "Keep moving. Don't stop," she urged, her voice unwavering despite the chaos. Meanwhile, Martinez's voice crackled over the comms. "Doc, we're holding them off for now, but we can't keep this up forever." "We just need to hold until reinforcements arrive," Dr. Ling replied, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the shuttles waited. On the HMS Valiant, Commander Hayes watched the battle unfold on the view screen. "Lieutenant Ramirez, status on those reinforcements?" 5 minutes out, Commander," Ramirez reported, "but we're taking heavy fire." Hayes's jaw tightened. "Keep those fighters off our shuttles. We can't afford to lose any more lives." As the minutes ticked by, the battle raged on both in the skies and on the ground. Dr. Ling and Martinez fought valiantly to protect the evacuees, their determination unwavering even as the odds seemed insurmountable. Finally, the long-awaited reinforcements arrived, their ships descending from the sky like avenging angels. The Zeltari, caught off guard by the sudden influx of human fighters, began to retreat. "Commander Hayes, reinforcements are engaging the enemy," Ramirez reported, relief evident in her voice. Hayes allowed himself a brief smile. "Good. Let's finish this." With the arrival of the reinforcements, the tide of battle quickly turned. The Zeltari fighters were driven back, and the skies over New Terra Prime cleared once more. On the ground, Dr. Ling and Martinez watched as the last shuttle lifted off, carrying the final group of evacuees to safety. "We did it," Dr. Ling said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Martinez grinned, his usual humor returning full force. "Doc, I always knew we would. Now let's get back to the ship before something else decides to blow up." Dr. Ling chuckled, shaking her head. "Lead the way, Chief." As they made their way back to the rendezvous point, the sense of victory was tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. But for now, they had won a hard-fought battle, and the evacuees of New Terra Prime were safe. Desperate measures. The bridge of the HMS Valiant was a hive of activity as Captain Eleanor Voss reviewed the latest tactical data. The Xeltari fleet was closing in, and the situation was growing increasingly dire. Despite their best efforts, the human forces were being pushed to their limits. "Lieutenant Kane, report," Captain Voss commanded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Lieutenant Marcus Kane, sweat glistening on his forehead, turned to face her. "Shields are holding at 25%, Captain. Weapons systems are operational, but we're running low on torpedoes." Captain Voss nodded, her mind racing. They needed a game-changer, something that would turn the tide in their favor. "Prepare to execute Operation Dark Horse," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Lieutenant Kane's eyes widened. "Captain, are you sure? It's incredibly risky." "We don't have a choice," Voss replied firmly. "It's our only shot at turning this battle around. Get your team ready, Lieutenant. We need to act fast." Kane nodded, determination etched on his face. "Aye, Captain. We'll make it happen." As Lieutenant Kane and his team raced to implement the plan, the bridge was a flurry of controlled chaos. The stakes were high and the pressure was mounting, but the crew of the HMS Valiant was nothing if not resilient. Down in the medbay, Dr. Mei Ling was tending to a wounded soldier when the ship rocked from another hit. She steadied herself, her quirky demeanor providing a stark contrast to the seriousness of the situation. "Hang in there, buddy," she said with a grin, patting the soldier on the shoulder. "Just a few more stitches, and you'll be back in action. Or at least, back to being able to hold a coffee cup without spilling it everywhere." The soldier managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Doc. Your bedside manner is unique." Dr. Ling winked. "It's a gift. Now stay still or you'll end up with a face tattoo you didn't ask for." Despite the tension, her antics brought a moment of levity to the medbay. The crew needed every bit of humor they could get in the face of such overwhelming odds. Back on the bridge, Lieutenant Kane and his team worked tirelessly to prepare for Operation Dark Horse. The plan involved a risky maneuver to lure the Xeltari fleet into a trap, using the HMS Valiant as bait. "Engineering, we need those shield modifications now," Kane barked into his comm, his fingers flying over the controls. "We're on it, Lieutenant," came the reply, "but it'll take time. We're dealing with damage from the last attack." "We don't have time," Kane muttered to himself, his mind racing with the calculations. "We need to make this work." As the modifications were completed, Captain Voss addressed the crew. "Listen up, everyone. This is our last, best chance to turn the tide. Operation Dark Horse is risky, but I know we can pull it off. Stay focused and trust in each other." The crew's response was a chorus of affirmations. They were ready. "Lieutenant Kane, are we ready to execute?" Voss asked. "Yes, Captain. All systems a go," Kane replied, his voice steady. "Engage," Voss commanded. The HMS Valiant surged forward, drawing the Xeltari fleet into their trap. The ship's modified shields flared to life, creating an energy pulse that disrupted the enemy's systems. "Now, Lieutenant!" Voss shouted. Kane activated the final phase of the plan, launching a barrage of torpedoes at the disoriented Xeltari ships. The enemy fleet reeled from the unexpected assault, their formation breaking apart. "Direct hits on multiple targets, Captain," Lieutenant Ramirez reported, excitement in her voice. "Keep up the pressure," Voss ordered. "We have them on the ropes." As the battle continued, it became clear that Operation Dark Horse was a success. The Xeltari fleet, caught off guard by the bold maneuver, began to retreat. "We did it," Kane said, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. Captain Voss allowed herself a moment of relief. "Well done, everyone. But let's not get complacent. We still have a war to win." Down in the medbay, Dr. Ling patched up her last patient and leaned against the wall, a satisfied grin on her face. "Guess we're not done yet," she said to herself, her eyes twinkling with determination. As the HMS Valiant regrouped with the rest of the fleet, the crew knew that while the battle had been won, the fight was far from over. But for now, they had turned the tide, and their spirits were lifted by the knowledge that they could overcome even the most desperate of situations. The final stand. The evacuation of New Terra Prime was nearly complete, but the atmosphere on the HMS Valiant was tense. The crew worked with grim determination, aware that the true challenge lay ahead. In the distance, the full force of the Xeltari Armada loomed, an ominous reminder of the peril they faced. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Xeltari fleet was advancing, their numbers overwhelming. But retreat was not an option. Humanity's survival hinged on their ability to stand and fight. "All systems are operational, Captain," Lieutenant Sofia Ramirez reported, her voice steady despite the tension. "We're ready." Captain Voss took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Patch me through to the crew," she ordered. The comms crackled to life, and the faces of her crew appeared on the view screen. Voss's eyes swept over them, seeing the mix of fear and determination etched into their expressions. "Listen up, everyone," Voss began, her voice strong and unwavering. "We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always prevailed. Today, we stand on the brink of our greatest challenge. The Xeltari believe they can crush us, but they underestimate the power of human resilience and determination." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for every man, woman, and child who looks to us for protection. We fight for the future of humanity. This is our moment. Stand with me, and together we will show the Xeltari that we will not be broken." A chorus of affirmations echoed through the bridge, the crew's spirits lifted by their captain's words. They were ready to face whatever came their way. "Lieutenant Kane, prepare the ship for a counterattack," Voss ordered, her eyes blazing with determination. "Lieutenant Ramirez, coordinate with the fleet. We strike together." As the HMS Valiant surged forward, the Xeltari Armada closed in, their ships bristling with weapons. The space between the two fleets was a deadly void, ready to erupt into chaos. "All ships, this is Captain Voss," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "Focus your fire on the lead Xeltari destroyers. We break their front line, we break their formation." The first volleys of energy bolts and torpedoes streaked through the void, lighting up the darkness with brilliant flashes. The HMS Valiant shuddered as enemy fire impacted its shields, but the crew held firm. "Shields at 50%, Captain," Ramirez reported, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Maintain formation," Voss commanded. "Target their weapons systems and engines. We need to cripple them." Lieutenant Marcus Kane directed the ship's weapons, his focus unyielding. "Firing torpedoes," he announced, watching as the projectiles streaked towards their targets. Explosions rocked the Xeltari fleet as the human ships struck with precision. The lead Xeltari destroyers faltered, their formation breaking apart. "We're making progress, Captain," Ramirez said, a note of triumph in her voice. "Keep up the pressure," Voss urged. "We can't let them regroup." As the battle raged on, the HMS Valiant and its fleet pushed deeper into the heart of the Xeltari Armada. The enemy fought fiercely, but the humans' resolve was unbreakable. "Captain, multiple enemy ships are retreating," Kane reported, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "Don't let up now," Voss said, her heart pounding with adrenaline. "This is our chance to deal a significant blow." With a final coordinated assault, the human fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of firepower. The Xeltari ships, unable to withstand the onslaught, began to fall back, their formation in disarray. "Captain, the Xeltari are retreating!" Ramirez exclaimed, disbelief and joy mingling in her voice. Voss allowed herself a brief moment of relief. "Well done, everyone. We've shown them what humanity is capable of. But stay alert. We need to ensure the safety of the evacuees and secure the area." As the last of the Xeltari ships vanished into the void, the crew of the HMS Valiant erupted into cheers. They had faced their greatest challenge and emerged victorious, dealing a significant blow to the Xeltari forces. Captain Voss watched the celebrations with a proud smile. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. For now, they had proven their resilience and determination, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. "Lieutenant Ramirez, signal the fleet," Voss said, her voice steady. "Begin recovery operations and prepare for any potential counterattacks. We can't afford to let our guard down." As the crew moved to carry out her orders, Captain Voss stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew that as long as they stood together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead, triumph and reflection. The HMS Valiant floated in the stillness of space, a silent guardian over the evacuated world below. The battle was over, and the Xeltari armada had been driven back. On the bridge, the tension that had gripped the crew for days began to ebb, replaced by a profound sense of relief and triumph. Captain Elena Voss stood at the helm, her eyes sweeping over her exhausted but jubilant crew. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, a testament to their resilience and determination. "Excellent work, everyone," Voss said, her voice warm with pride. "We've achieved something remarkable today. The evacuees are safe, and we've dealt a significant blow to the Xeltari forces." Lieutenant Marcus Kane, still at his station, leaned back in his chair with a satisfied grin. "Never doubted it for a second, Captain," he said, earning chuckles from his fellow officers. Lieutenant Sophia Ramirez joined in, a rare smile lighting up her face. "I'll admit, it was touch and go there for a while. But we did it." As the crew shared a moment of camaraderie, Dr. Mei Ling appeared on the bridge, her quirky demeanor a welcome sight. "All right, who's ready for a post-battle checkup?" she asked with a grin. "I promise no face tattoos this time." Kane laughed. "As long as you keep your promise, Doc." Dr. Ling's lightheartedness brought a welcome levity to the aftermath of the battle. Despite the challenges they had faced, the crew found solace in their shared humor and resilience. Captain Voss's comm beeped, interrupting the moment. "Captain, this is engineering. We found something you need to see." "On my way," Voss replied, curiosity piqued. She gestured for Lieutenant Kane to join her. "Kane, with me." In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Harris met them with a serious expression. "Captain, Lieutenant, we've discovered something in the wreckage of one of the Xeltari ships." Kane's interest was immediately piqued. "What did you find?" Harris led them to a console displaying a complex data stream. "We've extracted intelligence from the Xeltari systems. It appears to be strategic plans and deployment orders." Voss's eyes widened. "This could shift the balance of power in our favor. If we understand their strategy, we can anticipate their moves." Kane nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We need to get this to command immediately. This information is a game changer." As they reviewed the data, the weight of their discoveries settled in. The intelligence they had obtained could provide humanity with a crucial advantage in the ongoing war against the Xeltari. Back on the bridge, Captain Voss addressed the crew. "Listen up, everyone. We've discovered vital intelligence that could change the course of this war. This battle was just the beginning. We have the chance to turn the tide in humanity's favor." The crew's response was a mixture of excitement and determination. They had faced incredible challenges, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. As the HMS Valiant set course for the nearest human outpost to relay their findings, Captain Voss took a moment to reflect. The battle had been won, but the sacrifices made weighed heavily on her mind. Many lives had been lost, and the scars of war would linger long after the fighting had ceased. Lieutenant Kane joined her at the viewport, his gaze thoughtful. "You know, Captain, despite everything, I believe we're stronger for it. The crew, the evacuees, we're all united by this experience." Voss nodded, her expression resolute. "You're right, Kane. We've faced the darkness and come through it stronger. And as long as we stand together, we can face whatever the Xeltari throw at us." Dr. Ling sauntered over, her usual playful grin in place. "And if all else fails, we can always resort to my secret weapon, impeccable bedside manner." Kane laughed. "That and your questionable tattoo skills." As laughter rippled through the bridge, Captain Voss felt a renewed sense of hope. They had proven their resilience and determination, and with the vital intelligence in hand, they had a real chance to change the course of the war. The HMS Valiant continued its journey through the stars, a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. The challenges ahead were daunting, but Captain Voss and her crew were ready to face them head-on. United and stronger than ever, they were determined to continue the fight against the Xeltari threat, no matter the cost.